Here we go.
All right, so this is my good friend, Dr. Chris Hobbs. Have a long history together, and another good meeting with conversations with Mr. P. And so I want to introduce him to you. He's got some great thoughts that can help us, I think, during these weird times. And so, Chris, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, your background, and all that kind of stuff.
Good morning, everyone. My name's Dr. Chris Hobbs. Most everyone I interact with around schools knows me as Coach Hobbs. And so with Mr. P, we go back a long time, as he was my high school history teacher, my assistant varsity basketball coach, my goalkeeper coach, really through my junior and senior year. He was also an alum of the school that I attended, and he was left-handed. His name was Chris, and so we had all these similarities, and so had a big impact on my life. So I'm just super excited to hang out with you, Chris, for a few minutes here. For me, background really is Christian schools, primarily the big memories, or if you will, the big influential points would be teams and coaches and athletics. Played 3 sports at a small Christian high school, and then basketball was a unique passion for me, with my father being a basketball coach, and so got a chance to play small college basketball, had an absolute blast, had a great coach that had a big impact on my life, and then after college, turned into a coach, and just absolutely really loved it from day one, and that evolved into athletic administration, leading athletic departments. Kind of fell butt backwards into leading an athletic department probably a little sooner than I should have. But that's just kind of the way God ordained it. And pretty much instantaneously, really valued the opportunity, not just to impact student athletes, but to structure and frame athletic departments and encourage coaches and help them really have that type of impact that was so big in my life. And so that's led to, right after college, to a school in the Washington, D.C. area for 7 years. I had a great experience there, spent almost 10 years at a school back in New Jersey. I'm a New Jersey native, so I spent about 10 years there, right outside New York City in central New Jersey. And then I've spent the last 4 years here at the King's Academy in West Palm Beach, Florida. So kind of been at some of the major hubs on the East Coast, earned a bunch of degrees, have had some successes, have had a ton of failures. And there's, we live in a day and age where we see everyone's highlights and we see everyone's, mountaintop experiences. But for every one of those, there's scores and scores and scores of just daily grind. Yep. And so just super excited to hang out with you today, Chris, and talk little shop with you.
That's a really good thought you just said about the failures. One thing that I've noticed more and more as I've taught the Bible is that we often highlight a guy like Gideon. Let's just throw him out there, right? Amazing victory. It's one thing mentioned in his life. That's it.
Yep.
Yep. And I'm guilty of, wow, look how great this was. Yeah, it was probably a 3-day deal. That's it.
Yeah. You're 100% right. I'm unpacking a study at our church with college age students on Nehemiah and his ability to kind of cast vision and pursue vision. I just actually recorded a session on discouragement and distractions, and even packaged into Nehemiah's great success, rebuilding the wall around Jerusalem, which ultimately led into a dozen years being their governor. Man, there was a lot of struggle, that is probably skimmed over too easily. So you're right.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about your family.
So married my high school sweetheart. We actually sat in Mr. P's history classes.
I got some stories about that too.
Yeah. We were, if you understand anything about birth order and you believe in birth order, there's certain character traits that go along with whether or not you're the oldest in the family, youngest in the family, in relation to how many boys and girls are in the family and how many kids are in the family. And so that all being said, Jen and I are both firstborns, which we pretty much grew up in our homes telling our siblings what to do. And then all of a sudden we started dating each other and trying to tell each other what to do, and got married and tried to tell each other what to do. And it's been an explosive. We've been together. Boy, Chris, this is going to make us feel old. We started dating in January of 95.
Yep.
So whatever that brings us now, about 25 years. I guess we just crossed the 25-year mark together, and we'll cross the 20-year mark married here in this summer.
That's crazy.
I know, right? So wonderful wife, love her to death. I've got a funny story about that for another time, about just God's sovereignty and knowing exactly who we need in our spouse. But got 3 great kids. Alexis is 18, CJ is 15, Madison's 14, and they are the apples and trees, everybody. They are passionate and explosive and cantankerous in their own ways. And so it is it's a three-ring circus in my house, survival of the fittest.
Yeah, I won't tell the story of the stabbing here since we're recording. That's the greatest story ever. All right, so you already mentioned your education. You already mentioned what you do now. So how is this current? I think you on your blog post discussed a tragedy, which is probably a really good explanation of it. How is this impacting your school right now?
Man, it is forcing our school to pivot quickly. There's a lot of great stuff out there, and has been probably for the better part of a decade now, on how technology is disrupting education.
Hmm.
And disrupt isn't a bad word. A
No.
lot of times we see disrupt as a bad word. Maybe a better word is changing and forcing education to evolve.
Yeah.
And then all of the, but we seem to, as in education, public school, private school, Christian school, seem to be able to kind of pick and choose
Right.
what that disruption looked like, and
Right.
now we can't.
That's right.
It is being forced on us now, and so here at the King's Academy in Florida, just pivoting quickly and trying to quickly provide an educational experience to parents when their students aren't allowed to come on our campus anymore.
Yeah.
Even if they were, they wouldn't send them.
Yeah.
Considering the current circumstances, and so that's probably been the biggest impact on us, is forcing us to pivot. And then for me as the director of athletics, um, really challenging me to make sure that my coaches feel the support they need to turn around and provide the mentorship and the influence on our student athletes that can be really critical right now. It's a really disorienting time for everybody, but
Right.
particularly for teenagers, particularly for seniors in high school,
Yeah.
that their senior year has taken just an unbelievable turn.
Yeah.
Nothing we've ever seen before. We've never seen a senior year for any senior class, certainly in our lifetime, take a turn like this.
Yeah.
And so that can be really disorienting to teenagers. And so coaches can play a huge role in connecting with them, mentoring them, helping to keep them steady, consoling them. And so I'm just trying to, do a good job communicating with my coaches and helping them to think those types of thoughts.
Yeah.
And then I've got great coaches at Kings. They'll turn around and, continue to administer to our student
How
athletes.
how many students do you have at King's Academy?
So we've got right around 1,500 on campus, so
Okay.
just north of 1,500 on campus. For me, as the director of athletics, athletics for us includes sixth grade all the way up to senior in high school. And so that's going to be just north of, I don't know, 850
Okay.
students, and about 500 of them are in our athletic department.
Okay.
So
That's enough.
yeah,
that's,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
plenty.
We're busy. We're blessed. The school
Yeah.
is really, really supportive of. Somehow, it feels like the school is supportive of everything,
Good.
and so I certainly sense that as the athletic director.
How is this impacting your own kids personally?
Yeah, so we've tried to. I just sat down and had a conversation with my kids Sunday after our online church service. I think all of us that go to church, we're on online church this Sunday,
Yep.
probably. I've seen some stuff going around about drive-through church services
Yeah, I
where they
saw that
literally
too.
just had people drive up into the parking lot, and and someone just praise and worship from the parking lot and preaching
Yeah.
from the parking lot, and just don't get out of your cars, everyone. Which I thought that was a unique take on things. But
Yeah.
so after our online church service, um, really had a conversation with the kids about gratefulness, and how thankfulness and gratefulness has a way of helping us navigate complicated scenarios like this, staying focused on the things that we do have, the opportunities we do have,
Yep.
rather than getting focused on some of the things that might be being lost in this moment.
Right.
We talked about staying intentional every day, staying in some form of a routine, a rhythm, set
Right.
goals, try and emerge from this coronavirus pandemic. Whenever we reemerge from it, try and emerge from it better than when it began.
Yeah.
And we talked about the importance, just kind of a family finance matter, of getting lean and staying lean financially, because you just
Yeah.
don't know what this looks like. And sometimes when we're home, we shop on Amazon all day.
Yeah.
We think about the things that take some time to purchase, but we don't have the time to ever think about it. But now we got the time to think about it. It's amazing how much money you can spend when you're just
Oh
sitting at
yeah.
home nowadays.
Yeah.
And so, we tried to make sure that the reins are pulled in nice and tight on that. So that's kind of how we've tried to frame it
Yeah.
as it impacts our kids. And we are thinking thoughts about, hey, you know, what does this look like if the current situation doesn't change before the school year is over?
Right.
What does this look like for our senior daughter, our 18-year-old senior in high school?
Yep.
Some big things happen in that fourth quarter of
Yep.
your senior year that are going to look a lot different, possibly. So
Yeah.
that's kind of how we're dealing with it right
Yeah.
now and what it looks like for us.
Yeah, and for those of you that are watching this, we are recording this on Tuesday the 24th. So the current situation is the state of Virginia just closed schools for the year yesterday. In Ohio, here where we live, they've demanded that coaches have a no contact period with all athletes. So spring athletes cannot even contact their coaches right now. And we are in a 3-week pause at our school. I think it's gonna be a lot longer than that, but our governor's done a pretty good job of articulating what he wants to do as far as by 3-week processes. And yeah, for our own kids, same thing. It's interesting too in this kind of situation how you really see the personality of your children very specifically in the needs that they have. I think you mentioned yours. My oldest is 20. He right now is not working, so he just wants to get out of the house, even though he's more of an introvert. Emma is an extrovert, and she can't believe she can't leave the house. And then you got Micah, who's in the middle of a club soccer season that may not even happen. So he was out in the backyard. We don't have weights at our house because he always works out at the school. So he's out yesterday lifting logs in our backyard, doing squats. And
Figure it out.
and that's what I was going to say is this whole thing makes you realize if what you want is what you want bad enough, you will figure it out.
Yeah, 100% true. My oldest is like I said, she's a senior in high school.
Yeah, same with my son. Yep.
Yep, go major into business, and has had a really nice high school athletic career. But that's not really where her passion lies.
Sure.
My son is 15 years old. He's fallen in love with distance running. And he has quickly talk about the word pivot. He has quickly pivoted and created an entire 6-week rhythm to his running schedule now. Readjusted his goals. He's got opportunities to take on some training intensities right now that he wouldn't normally because he's in track season at the moment. But because he's not worried about performing at a high level once a week, he can and he's done a great job of like reframing that and to this point so far not wasting any of the time. And then my youngest daughter is into the club travel volleyball scene. And she's trying to figure out, what in the world to do when she can't get to her facility and she's not. They've already canceled 3 of her big tournaments. So
yeah,
I agree with you. If you want it bad enough, you'll figure it out.
Yeah, I remember you growing up. You had a circuit in your garage, and your garage was probably what, but 15 by 20.
Yeah, it was a single car garage, and there was so much stuff in there you couldn't get a car in there. That's for sure.
Yeah, you know what I mean. So you just kind of figure it out. And I think the thing that we need to realize is, and I think I found this out, is as Americans, we tend to want what we want. Like you mentioned about Amazon, we want what we want, and we want it conveniently. And all of a sudden now things aren't convenient, and we don't know what to do. Well, you either adapt or you just crumble, right?
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. I'm reading through a book right now that I'd recommend to really everyone listening and watching right now. It's called Your Future Self Will Thank You by Drew Dyke. And it's an awesome book about like a biblically based perspective on self-discipline. And it incorporates all of the current research and the brain science behind, self-discipline and willpower and things like that. And it's incredible how we consume so many small bits of information, up to 75 times more information per day than we did a generation ago. So if you think a generation ago, our fathers read the newspaper on a Sunday morning. Imagine if we now read 75 newspapers on a Sunday morning. That's the kind of consumption, but it's left little time for digestion, for mental contemplation, which means we have incredible impatience. We don't like boring processes. And yet all of the most significant things we'll ever develop in our life are the result of a boring process that unfolds itself over not only days, weeks, and months, but over years.
Right.
And it's almost like the advent of technology, which is awesome. We're experiencing it right now and enjoying it right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it definitely has something that has a downside that we need to be aware of. Because like you said, if you want it bad enough, you'll get it. But the problem is some of us have trained our brains so well on just getting what we want right now. Just through little bits of information that we've almost lost the ability to tolerate what it would take to develop, significant experiences, processes, degrees, skills in our lives.
Yeah.
I think what's really, I dare say, cool about this time in our country's existence right now is I think a lot of us are getting time to hit the pause button and maybe think through some of this stuff.
I
So
agree. Yeah, I agree. And again, that goes back to our perspective, doesn't it? Because you can either sit in your house and listen. I do agree with this. My wife read a blog about how there is a stage of mourning. Again, you mentioned I have a senior. You have a senior. It's okay to quote unquote mourn and go through stages of grief about
yep,
the situation, but you
yep,
can't stay there, because if you stay
yeah,
there, you get nothing productive out of it. You know what I mean?
yep, yep.
Why don't you talk about your blog, and if you want to share about that, because I've read a few of them. I read two this morning, matter of fact, and you got some great stuff there.
Really, really, I guess personally fascinated with persistence and being intentional, and kind of living life on purpose. And that's been something that's evolved, probably all the way back to, man, Chris, when you were coaching me, and just thinking about, hey, what extra could I do to develop my skill as a soccer goalkeeper or as a basketball player, and just all of a sudden just yielding some little benefits of that as a 14, 15, 16-year old. And then it just continues to be a theme in my life. And so 2 years ago, I guess, I had a group here at the King's Academy that a basketball team that I was directly coaching. I don't coach varsity basketball anymore, but when I was, I had a group that just had a unique ability to figure out how to win a game. And it took us 2 full seasons to get to that place. But once we got there, man, they just knew how to like bite down and not let go. And they resonate with that idea. And at the same time, I read an article about Winston Churchill and just kind of his spirit and his persistence and his refusal to give in. He's got that famous speech that he delivered
Mm,
to a bunch of graduates during the time of World War II when it looked like Nazi Germany was going to overtake London.
yeah.
And he's delivering a graduation speech to graduates in the midst of that. And that's when he gives that famous, we will never give in, never, 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 never. He says like never 11 times in two
Yeah.
sentences.
Yeah.
And that was kind of Churchill's personality.
Yeah.
And I read this story about how he used to often keep his pet bulldog with him when he would go to really, really pretty much everything, including meetings that you probably shouldn't be bringing a dog into. And he was asked once by a reporter why he always had a bulldog with him. And he said he doesn't have to let go to breathe. And their snub noses allows them to bear down on something, bite, and they can just hold on. And that, a lot of times the longer nose of a dog, it gets trapped up against something
Yeah.
and it's got to let go to breathe. And bulldogs have that anatomical advantage. They don't need to do that. And so I shared that with this group of guys as we were beginning to figure out how to, like, in a 32-minute high school basketball game, like struggle, 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 figure it out and win the game. We ended up winning 9 of our last 10 games that year, and a bunch of them, we looked at each other like early in the second quarter, like, well, this is a mess. But they would just figure it out.
Hmm.
I mean, so bite down and don't let go is the name of the blog.
Okay.
And it's all about just being intentional, being persistent, and what that looks like in the face of a lot of struggle, a lot of life circumstances. And so that's kind of the gist to it. I hope it's adding value to some people's lives. I hope it's maybe some people, it's giving a shot in the arm to some people.
Yeah.
But a lot of it I'm writing just to help me kind of flesh out some of my
Yeah.
ideas that I guess I'm pretty passionate about, and try and hopefully exemplify in my own life.
Yeah. And if I figure it out, I'll put a link on this YouTube video to that blog, so my friends can see that. Name me a few books that you've read. Probably you're a big time reader. I want to be. I just not very good at it. But go ahead and share some books that you'd like to for people to check out.
There's a great book. This is a little deep here. Dallas Willard is a great modern day theologian. He actually just passed away, I think maybe 4 or 5 years ago. There's a seminary, I believe, somewhere named after him. He wrote a book called The Spirit of the Disciplines. And it's a really good modern day look on spiritual disciplines. That's a great one that I've actually refreshed the last little bit here. I referenced the one by Drew Dyke called Your Future Self Will Thank You.
Hmm.
For those that are looking for kind of maybe a spiritually a deep book, he actually wrote a book. This is how I came onto him as an author. He wrote a book a while back called Yawning at Tigers. And it uses the analogy of a little girl sitting at a plexiglass window in a zoo, staring nose to nose with a tiger, and she's completely unimpressed by the man-eating beast that's on just the other side of that glass, right? And that's the analogy, and Drew Dyke uses that as an analogy for how a lot of us as Christ followers view God now. We're literally yawning at a tiger, you know. And so
Wow.
that was a great book, really well written, some really deep concepts written very simply. I really enjoyed that. Some other books that I've really enjoyed. Clay Scroggins has got 2 out right now. I'm actually at a church where Dr. Jimmy Scroggins, who is Clay Scroggins, I believe, uncle. Jimmy Scroggins, I've coached a bunch of Jimmy's boys. Jimmy's had a huge impact in my life in the last couple of years. So that's how I got turned on to Clay Scroggins, who is actually the lead teaching pastor at Andy Stanley's old North Point campus.
Okay. All right.
When Andy Stanley stepped away to lead his entire multi-campus ministry, Clay took over Andy's actual campus.
Gotcha.
Clay wrote a book, How to Lead When You're Not in Charge. And it's a biblically based perspective on self-leadership and how to take care of the moment. Really, really good book, valuable for anyone because we all have bosses.
Yeah.
And then he wrote one just recently called Leading in the Midst of Distraction, I believe is the title of it. And it's all about how to lead and influence people in a day and age when we're just distracted all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of it has to do with, the devices in our pockets. So
Right.
those would be some ones that come to the forefront of my mind that I really, really enjoyed.
Chris just turned me on to do a book called Operation Paperclip. And so I read that back in January, February. That's insane, man. That book had the hair on the back of my neck standing up for every chapter just about. Oh, my word. Yeah, if you want to read something that just will freak you out, that'll do it.
Yeah. Here's what I remember about that book. And I probably, for about a year, I read really much longer history books that it just kind of recounted historical experiences like Operation Paperclip. And the 2 things struck me: the capacity of leaders to make really, really hard decisions for the greater good was really, really stood out to me in books. And the other thing that stood out to me is the lack of social awareness to the fallout of those hard decisions.
Yes.
There's some great historical leaders that would never have survived in today's cancel culture.
Yes.
Because we are just all so aware of every decision every leader makes every time they make it.
It's funny you say that. I was telling somebody about that book and then about our current situation that you can make a decision that is helpful for today that impact-wise down the road may be cataclysmic in good or bad ways.
Yeah.
And that's the fascinating thing about going back and looking at history is those decisions in Operation Paperclip were probably the ones they had to make. But wow, talking about opening up a Pandora's box. Holy smokes. Man. It's insane. It's insane.
Yep. Absolutely.
Let's see here. I was going to ask you this question. So when you hire a coach, what's that process look like?
Yeah. So we have a pretty clearly articulated athletic department mission, where our athletic department mission is to provide an excellent athletic experience with eternal impact. And so we put a high premium on how the kids are experiencing athletics, and we put a high premium on discipling them through the athletic experience. So we need to hire coaches that can, what we call, make mission. I talk all the time with our coaches about make mission. One of the best things I do to help bring that vision to realization is I ask coaches to regularly tell me stories about making mission. Hey, tell me a story. And they know what I'm looking for. And then, especially in maybe a coach meeting setting, their telling of a story of making mission actually casts the vision in and of itself to the rest of our coaches. And so that's a little trick I picked up from a friend who's an athletic director, actually at Cuyahoga Valley Christian Academy in Ohio.
Okay.
John Young. John Young's a former college teammate of mine and my brother's. And John and I still talk regularly. And I stole that idea of tell a story as a way to cast vision from him. So that being said, we're trying to find coaches that can make mission. And so it usually begins with, if I'm being practical about it, an internal email to our entire employees, make them aware that there's a position available. Obviously, employees that are qualified to coach that are already on campus are a huge get for the culture of the school.
Sure.
And then that email, if that doesn't yield results sooner rather than later, turns into an email to our entire school community, parents, and all that. And then that'll kind of, if that domino doesn't help us, that domino falls into social media posting and things like that. I'll say probably 9 times out of 10, the coach candidate is connected to someone that's already connected to our athletic department.
That's
And
nice.
so it's amazing how people how people who know what you're about and what you're after will recommend high potential candidates to you because they know that the match will work. And so that's kind of what that looks like for us. And then we spent a lot of time talking about what does excellent athletics look like? What does eternal impact look like? And so the mission, excellent athletics, eternal impact, and then the vision, we have the vision broken down, I guess not broken down, but encapsulated in 5 loves. If we've made mission with a student athlete that's been with us for at least 4 years, so we kind of frame everything freshman year to senior year.
Right.
If we've made mission with them, they would be able to say, I played a sport I loved, at a school I loved, with teammates I loved, under a coach I loved, for a God I loved.
Awesome.
So if a senior in high school has played 4 years for us and can really, in some way, shape, and form, say those 5 loves have increased for him or her in those 4 years, then we feel pretty good we've made mission with that student athlete. And then opportunities to play collegiately, like that takes care of itself. Winning championships takes care of itself, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and again, you and I have had enough success that we know what winning looks like, but winning does not solve everything. It helps short term, but in all reality, the long term impact is culture over everything else. I had a chance to help with our varsity girls this year, and just a great group of kids. We have 1-star athlete, and she makes a difference. But the culture in that team was that she was willing to be coached and corrected, and therefore everybody else was too. So when you have a culture like what you just described, it makes a huge impact for lengthy periods, not just for 6 months.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. 100%.
You there? Okay. One last thing, and then I'll let you out on this one. So give us some recommendations for how we can use this tragedy wisely.
Oh boy. The first thing I would do is I would challenge you to accept it. I wrote about this just a couple of days ago, and how can you gauge that you've accepted our current situation? Number one, you're not complaining about it very much. You're not complaining about how unfair it is. So I would challenge you to accept it. And number two, you're not spending too much time worrying about things you can't control. That's a hard thing to do. We get some great advice. I believe it's in Philippians 4, where Paul says, cast all your anxieties on him, but Paul also frames that in an attitude of gratefulness.
Right.
And so I think if we're worried about how the dominoes are going to fall throughout this experience with the coronavirus, I think we're going to miss out on some really, really cool opportunities. And so I challenge everyone to accept it. And then I would challenge everyone to structure your day while we're all kind of quarantined. Some of us are literally shelter in place. I've got some friends in California that are shelter in place. We're not shelter in place yet, but it's very unadvisable to be moving around in any type of social way. And so while we're kind of stuck at home right now, I'd encourage everyone to create a structure to your day. Get up at the same time. I'd encourage you to start your day slow. We so very rarely get to go slow. There's some great readings beginning to pop up about how important it is to pause and slow down, because mentally we're never slow because we consume so much. Physically, we're never slow because we have so many opportunities to be involved in so many different things.
Yep.
And so our society is just fast. And yet there's so much the Bible has to say about being slow, about resting, about pausing, about waiting. I read a great quote the other day that faith is grown in the silence.
Wow.
So I'd encourage everyone to get up the same day during this coronavirus quarantine and start the day slow. Leave your phone tucked away. Don't go look at your phone. Read something. Even just sit. For those of us that have nice weather, I can go sit on my back porch at 70 degrees at 6
Go ahead,
o'clock.
rub it in. That's nice.
But I would encourage you to go sit somewhere quiet and peaceful and start
Yeah.
your day slow. And then have a structure to your day.
Yeah.
If part of your structure is take a nap at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, keep with the structure.
Yeah. Yeah.
If part of your structure is have dinner with your family every night because we can right now.
Great
Imagine
idea.
that.
Yep.
And so those are probably the two things I would recommend people right now is just accept it. Don't spend time worrying about it. Don't spend time complaining about it. And then create a structure to your day. And then let me add this third thing. Start doing something every day that you've always told yourself you were going to start doing. And so if you wanted to start a habit reading a chapter of the Bible every day, well, now's the time to do it because we got the
Right.
time to do it. If you
Yep.
wanted to start, hey, I want to go for an hour walk every day. I've always wanted to do that. Well, now's the time to do it. So I wouldn't do all the things you always wanted to do. I would just pick one and
Yeah.
say, hey, during coronavirus, I'm doing this thing I always said I was going to start doing. I'm going to do this every day.
That's good.
And so I think if you do those three things, accept it, keep your day in a structured rhythm, and then do that one thing you've always said you wanted to do, I think you'll come out of coronavirus in some ways better than when you went into it.
That's really good. I think that's some excellent advice that I think everybody can apply because, again, I keep telling people it's not just us. It's not just Ohio. It's Florida. It's the country. It's the world.
It's incredible.
It's incredible. I think we just saw before we started, the Olympics just postponed until 2021. It's everybody. And so it's a time for us to pause, I think, reflect. And I think there's some great information to use this as an opportunity to recenter in the Lord and to make him our first priority, because right now everything else is set aside. Everything else is set aside. And
Yep.
so I really want to thank you for coming on, Chris. I know you got a lot of things going on in your life right now, and even though you're at the house, you still have 1,000 Zoom meetings going on. And so I really want to thank you so much. And maybe next time we'll talk about the pen story. That's great.
I don't know if that's going to get through onto the blog here. I don't know if we want the public to know about this, but let me say this to everyone too. Hey, if you get a chance to live life with Chris Peria on a regular basis, you are blessed. He had a huge impact in my life at the right time in my life. And so it just is really, really inspiring to me that he's continuing to do that at another Christian school up there in Ohio, and lots of other ministers too. So if you get to live life with Mr. P, consider that a blessing. Be grateful for that even during this coronavirus pandemic.
I'll tell you one funny story, then we'll get off here. I remember one time I came to your house after a basketball game to watch X-Files, and,
Yeah.
and I was so scared. I drove home with my lights on in my car.
That show could wig you out, man. That show was really scary at times.
Especially back then, yeah. That's hilarious. All right, Chris, thanks so much, buddy.
All right, man. Great talking to you. Thanks for having me on.